just talking about the passage
Right.
on the boat.
Well, once we got to Ellis Island, we went through the formality of being checked in and medical and so forth. And then we were, because we didn't have sponsors, because if you had sponsors, in other words, somebody that you knew in any city, you would go to that city. So we were just displaced persons without sponsors and not having anybody in the United States. There was some organization, I would assume it was the Jewish Federation or Jewish whatever it was called at that time, because when we were separated after the check-in on Ellis Island, you can hear all kinds of languages, you know, and they were separated. If you were Jewish, you go in this group, you know, if you were Italian in this group or whatever, Polish in this group. So I assume all those organizations had different handlers, so to speak, you know, and we were met with some Jewish people, you know, and talk Yiddish to us, you know, and told us what they're going to do. Basically took us to the hotel. We checked into the hotel. I believe we stayed maybe 2 or 3 nights there, and gave us opportunity to look out the window and see New York, which was totally amazing and surprising with the amount of people, you know. And again, with the freedom, you know, people talking and laughing instead of hiding, you know. So that was a constant experience that you don't forget about.
Did you have any sensation when you saw the Statue of Liberty or when you came in, or were you not familiar with that?
Oh yes, we were there. Matter of fact, I'm sorry I forgot that, because when we got closer, I think the captain of the ship or something, so the loudspeaker said we are approaching Ellis Island, you know. And of course everybody came out on deck. So I'm surprised that the boat didn't tip over, be top heavy, you know, because everybody was on top, see. And everybody was cheering, just happy as hell, you know, to see that.
In all different languages?
In all different languages, yes. And so that after we stayed in a hotel, then they came up with some paper and they told us we're going to be going to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Right? And apparently what they did, they had to have a sponsor. Each town, which I found out later how it worked, submitted that they could accept so many families to take care of, or help settle, or possibly have a job, whatever it was. And our destination was Oshkosh, Wisconsin. But somehow, between the hotel and the railroad station, it must have been changed, and we wound up in Milwaukee. Just, we had no control of it, whoever was doing it. When we were, excuse me, when we arrived in Milwaukee, we were met with some people that again explained that they have a place for us, and they rented an apartment for us in a duplex. It was owned by a Jewish couple, and we were on a upper floor.
Do you remember where it was?
I believe it was on 11th Street, North 11th Street. I don't know the address. And I don't know the name of the people that owned it, you know. Other than they had, I remember they had 2 kids down. And during the following days, they took my parents, well, all of us actually, to register, get social security numbers and all that other one being recorded, whatever documentation we needed. And the following that, we came in June, so the school didn't start yet. See? So my brother Bill and I, well, my brother didn't, but myself and due to my age, Bill was okay, he could start in a regular grade. He was 6 years younger, so it wasn't a big problem. But I needed to get a crash course in English so I could survive initially. And we came down to the Jewish Community Center right here on Prospect, but it was a different building. They had a bowling alley underneath. And that's why I met two other guys that were similar age. And they came a couple of months before us. One of them was Milt Kleinberg, and the other one was Aaron Fink. And all three of us rode to South Superior Street. They hired an English teacher. We went to her home every day from Monday through Friday. It was basically conversation and writing English, so we get prepared for school so we can get integrated. I remember the teacher told us that we should go ride the streetcars. At that time they had streetcars. And go to the movies to pick up the language. And also get familiarized with the environment and the people and the streetcars and the buses. So we did that.
Was that a fun summer?
Yeah, it was actually, you know. It was very interesting. And my parents got jobs. My dad was employed at that time. It was Ryerson Steel, I believe it was called, but later on they changed that, and I think it became of Alice Chalmers, something like that. And my mother worked in Wonder Bread in a bakery. And this is how our life started in Milwaukee, basically. As time went on, I took some night courses for colleges and so forth. And at that time, we still had the draft here. So we decided because if you started something and you get drafted, and kind of losses up the whole system. So we decided to go into the service and get it over with, our obligation.
You and who else?
Those two guys, Aaron and Milt. We went in different times, not exactly together, but we all made the same decision. I had my basic training in Fort Leonard, Missouri. And then for my second 8 weeks, they usually have basic training for everybody. Then you have another 8 weeks for some specialty. I was put in the communications for whatever reason. It was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then during that time, I got married. And
Before you went into the military?
no, while I was in the military.
How did you meet your wife?
Well, well, actually, sort of a blind date. I don't remember who was the blind one. And we got married, and then I got transferred to France, of all places, back to Europe.
So what was your wife's name and where was she from?
She was from Milwaukee. Her name was Carol Kahn. K-A-H-N. And
Were you living in a Jewish neighborhood at that time in Milwaukee?
yes, it was all in 11, 12, Teutonia, in that area. That was all predominantly, it started out German, but it became more and more Jewish as time went on, because that was already in 55 when we got married. Well, I got transferred and I wound up in Verdun, France, which was a bit, from what I understand, after I got there I found that out, was one of the biggest battles in World War II between Germany and France, Verdun. So that was our army base. My first son is French. He was born there. That's Bruce.
What year was he born?
1957. And we stayed there for, actually it turned out to be a vacation over there, you know. It was compared to anything else I did before. We stayed there for about 2 years.
What were you doing?
That's another long story, but I was in charge of supply. From communication I went to supply. And after discharge they shipped me back.
When was that?
It was in 59. So no, it wasn't. No, that had to be end of 57. End of 57. Yeah, I was discharged in December sometime, 57. And we came back to Milwaukee. I finished some of the education and started out in mechanical engineering and wound up with a BA eventually after a number of years.
From different schools?
Different schools and night schools and so on, because being married and a child, you had to work right away, you know.
So what kind of work were you doing while you were studying?
Well, I worked for different companies. One of my first full-time employment was by the name of a company by the Tal Bender, T-A-L Bender. By odd coincidence, that gentleman was from Holland, and it was on Water Street. It was on the third floor or something like that. Some of the old buildings, of course, they're all condos now. Yeah.
And what were you doing for him?
In a machine shop, various things. As you can tell by the name of Tal Bender, what he manufactured is tools to bend pipes for the plumbers and electricians when they install something.
When you first got to Milwaukee and through this period that you're talking about, was your family involved in a synagogue, or did you have any Jewish affiliations?
Oh yes, because we belonged to Menorah for a number of years. They were on Center Street at that time. And I think prior to that, there was other ones, but I don't remember which ones. And that was some time ago. Sometimes you can't remember all of them, but
were you involved in the New American?
not so much. For some reason, what I found out when a short time later, we must have been one of the families that never talked about the past. And talking to some of the other people the last 5 or 10 years, I found there were two categories, some three, but basically it was either you didn't talk about anything, and I don't remember talking about it at all at our table, you know, for the past. And I noticed some of the other people constantly talked about it and lived through it, and you know, so there were two camps apparently in that situation, you know. I don't know which one is better, but we did not talk about it, you know. Sort of try to get on with a new life and get an education and better yourself. That's about it.
Life seemed normal?
Surprisingly enough, it wasn't too long before it became standard, so to speak. You know, it wasn't as strange. I think I can only talk for myself because as a younger person, probably much easier. I think my parents had a more difficult time. Probably had continued to have a difficult time.
Did they ever learn English?
My dad did. My mother can speak but not write. So while in service, that was another sort of odd situation. I was in Fort Benning, Georgia, and when we got the orders to have to backtrack a little bit because I forgot about that. When I got the order to be shipped to Verdun, somehow somebody discovered I'm not a citizen. I should have never been in the service. Well, anyway, the commanding officer appointed a sergeant to me for 48 hours to learn everything I have to learn to pass the test. And about 3 days before I had to pack up and go, they drove me into Columbus, Georgia, to the circuit court. And there was some judge over there that asked me some questions and raised my hand. And I became a citizen. So my citizenship is from Georgia.
Were you excited to become a citizen?
Oh yes, very much so. And then of course my dad became a citizen, and of course my brother didn't have to, but automatically he was a child, my other two brothers. So it was automatic. My mother did not become a citizen until later on. Because apparently there's a time limit. If you're in a country so many years, you can become a citizen without the test and all that, without able to write or read. My mother never was able to do that, but she became a citizen. Matter of fact, probably about 20 years ago. So, and here my other interest, my more current interest is I'm involved with the Jewish war veterans considerably. And just like anything else, but a friend talked me into it, but then you realize that there's a purpose, a real purpose for it. And of course, the major purpose is to be visible and to show, because as a society, the United States, the Gentiles anyway, have that myth that the Jewish people do not serve. Of course, it's totally wrong. So this is number one job that we have to prove. And to prove it, we have to be visible and participate in various organizations. And we're part of the Allied Veterans here of Milwaukee County. We also represent the Jewish view whenever there's a meeting, as well as any legislation that's passing through. We go to Madison as a Jewish group to show our concern, what has to be done for veterans and so forth, not just for the Jewish veteran, but for the Jews, veterans as a whole, you know. So,
is it hard for Jewish veterans to come to a consensus?
Of course. Even the other veterans group have a difficult time. But all the groups, including the Jewish group, you know, are pretty much on the same track. That they're looking for benefits and for help for the current veterans that are coming out of the service, the needs. We're not concerned about ourselves. It's just the younger generation that we need help. And we've got to constantly bring it up to the legislature, whether it's in Madison or in Washington, D.C. And I had the opportunity to meeting almost all. Matter of fact, I was in Washington, D.C. about a year ago. And we had the opportunity to talk to Senator Cole, Johnson, and we had the opportunity of meeting Sensenbrenner, all the representatives, Gwen Moore, and who else did we see? We see quite a few people to encourage them to vote for certain bills that are in front of Congress, you know. So
what were some of the bills?
At that time, one of them was we wanted them to approve the Jewish veteran of the United States submitted a request to put a monument at the Arlington Cemetery for the Jewish chaplains, because they had monuments for the Catholic chaplains, Protestant chaplains that died in service. But we didn't have one. And we didn't want any money from them. We just wanted them to approve a spot, because the money was already collected, you know, and we had design already. But I'm happy to say that we have some monuments there now. It was installed this past year. So, and of course there was all the legislation that we funding and so on that we requested. One was because of the tremendous need for counseling for the PST that we have now. And we're setting up nationally and locally various places for veterans that can come in free of charge and take advantage of that thing. So, but it's hard to find them and make them do it. See?
Do you feel that Jews coming from the Holocaust also had some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder?
No question about it. No question about it. You have to have. And that's why I know of quite a few people that after coming here, well, I know of a personal friend that committed suicide. She cut her arm, unfortunately. You know, and that was 5 years later, right here in Milwaukee. So it wasn't easy for a lot of it. Maybe that's why my parents took the route of not talking about it and just create a new life rather than live in the past.
Was there counseling available?
I don't recall. There was structure set up for education and finding employment and so forth, but I don't remember having anything like that.
So, back to your effort to get PTSD funding,
Yeah.
are you finding success with that?
Quite a bit, yeah, quite a bit, you know, and but as I said, it's not the facilities now, it's trying to convince them to come and talk to them. We also found the last few years that the best counselors are the people that served, not just counselors, they're just another serviceman that they can talk to, because they can relate to them and it makes it easier for them to talk. Because if you get somebody that has not served, have no idea what they mean when they talk to you. Okay? And so we're getting more and more of those people in it.
What kind of jobs did you do after you got your degree, and what were some of the highlights of your career?
Well, I don't know if you call it highlights, but I worked basically in middle and upper management for large corporations. At that time, Milwaukee was a hub of machinery and equipment manufacturers here in Milwaukee. You had manufacturers like P&H, Harnischweger, Ellis Island, Inland Steel. There were lots of them. And there were construction manufacturers. I somehow wound up with construction manufacturers because of my mechanical engineering background. They sort of more interesting. But within a short time, I wound up in management because of my ability to deal with people. Apparently they felt was more worthwhile than being on a drawing board. And I went to part of some of the companies that I worked for, like American Hoist and a hydraulic machinery company, as well as local Miller Compressing I worked for. It also gave me the opportunity to set up satellite plants for them, and because again of my background with administration and engineering, I wound up in Canada for 2 or 3 years setting up a new division for them, and we stayed in London, Ontario, which is about 100 miles from Toronto.
And did you have children at this point?
Yeah, we had, at that point we had Jeffrey, and we had two boys. And while we were there, we acquired Elaine. We adopted her. She is a Canadian. Because we decided with our track record that we have any more kids, there'll be more boys, and we wanted a girl. So the decision was made to adopt her, and as long as we were there in Canada, it was easier than here.
How old was she when you adopted her?
She was 3 months old. And she was born in Ottawa, in the capital of Canada. We picked up from there. And then we came back to Milwaukee. I worked for some of the divisions, and after a while, I got sick and tired being sent all over the country to set up divisions and so on. And I decided to get out of it and work for myself. And that's when I went to insurance. And I decided to stay in Milwaukee without going all over the country.
And in insurance, you were selling?
I was what they call an independent agent there. So I was selling life, health, disability in that area, and investment, annuities and so on, this type of thing.
How long did you do that?
I did it for over 20 years. Until only recently. Matter of fact, I still have my finger in it a little bit, but for all practical purposes, I'm out of it. So.
Did you ever end up traveling to Uruguay or Israel or any of the other places?
I went to Israel, but not to any other countries. I went on vacations there. I went back to Europe, France and Italy and so forth, and England, but only on vacations. So
And Poland?
I have no desire. I know a lot of people went back and they asked me, I have no desire to go back there at all.
What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of that my parents made the decision to come to the United States. I'm very proud of my kids and grandkids, and which is very important to me because I don't remember having, when I was a kid, having an extended family at all. And they all disappeared. Since then, my aunt and uncle who were in Israel, they passed away. So I'm constantly cognizant of the small family. And so I'm very proud and try to make use for it as well as I can. And of course, I'm very proud being an American. Because there's no other country like it. And in spite of some of the faults, which are minor, considering what's going on and what I experience personally and what's still going on all over the world. Shouldn't complain about it, just participate in it.
What was the happiest moment in your life?
Well, I probably had a lot of them. I think the happiest moment, probably my first child was born. Because that was, we wanted a family, and I still feel very strongly family-oriented individuals, and so far I'm very proud of my kids. So seem to get the gist of it without me talking to them. They take care of their family and make sure their kids are in the right direction, education-wise and all the philosophical, just put it the right track on their head, so to speak. And that's probably the fondest moment of my life. And right now I continue taking great pride in seeing the grandkids growing up. And, I'm very proud of them. The two girls, they're probably more well known at Congregation Beth Israel than I am.
Is that where you are now, Bethesda?
Yes.
And what are their names?
Lauren and Meredith,
So these are your grandchildren.
the grandchildren, right? One of them speaks fluent and writes Hebrew, and the other one is very much in it too, but not as serious about it. And they both sort of alternate on a Torah reading almost every second week. Whenever somebody can't show up, they're always called up to take the place. So I'm very proud of them.
What does being Jewish mean to you?
Well, it's a heritage, the past. It also, it's a two-way street, so to speak. It also has a burden. But it also gives you the opportunity to be bigger than just the narrow tracks that some of the people choose to take. So in that way, I feel that I have something to carry on and perpetuate, not just physically, but philosophically and every other way. And I have the opportunity to add to it. I know I belong to a lot of organizations. Some of you can't participate fully in all of them, but some of them I do. And I think part of my experience and part of being Jewish, I can probably contribute more. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask me to come to join them.
What organizations?
Well, the veterans, we got also the various clubs and organizations, seniors that are not Jewish at all.
And when you say to carry on a philosophy or whatever, what do you have in mind?
Well, to carry on, what I mean is to continue, make sure that the Jewish people and the Jewish identity is not lost. Because it's very important to the society in spite of the negative attitude that society puts on us. But in reality, we make a great contribution to the whole world in almost every field. And we've got to continue that, because I think we still are the beacon of the world.
How do you feel about Israel?
Well, Israel gives us the opportunity to actually be a little more open and exposed. Because personally, I feel that even though I'm not there, I do have a country which the Jewish people never had for thousands of years. And there is no reason for anybody, in particular Jewish, not to support Israel. Because without the state of Israel, my personal opinion, we wouldn't have the freedom as Jews as much as we have now in the United States or probably all over the world. So it's very important.
Is that why you visited?
Oh, yes.
How was that experience for you?
It was very emotional because it's the first time I landed in a country that I felt like I belong. Also, even though United States, I love United States, I still don't feel I belong compared to Israel. because it's still in my heart and soul. It's not mine. It's not Jewish. That's the closest thing to Israel is America.
Did you ever consider moving to Israel?
Yes and no. Primarily, no is because of the age. For the time I started philosophically think about it, and practically, was already in the 50s, and you got family and everything else. It was not, unless you were a real strong Zionist, which I was not, but I know the importance of the existence and maintaining the state of Israel.
Is there something about yourself that no one else knows?
Well, I don't think so,
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't get to?
No, I think we covered basically the most important areas, Obviously, if you go into detail, we can talk about for days, but I think covered everything.
How would you like to be remembered?
As a good person. Nothing special. Just being a person that loved his family and liked it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You want me to talk about it?
Joe, I have a reflection.
Okay. Is this?
Yeah, it's not working. Oh, there we go.
Okay, maybe it was me. Okay.
No, it's the light. Okay.
This photograph is basically our immediate family. It's my dad, David, my mother, Leah, myself, it's Sam, my brother, Bill, and my youngest brother, Jacob. This is about a year and a half after we landed in Milwaukee in 1951. So this is about 1952. And to the best of my recollection, that was the first apartment, and it was at North 11th Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And this is the earliest picture that you have.
That's the earliest picture of this one. My hat on, this is the designation of the Jewish war veteran cap that we wear at our meetings or wherever we meet our representatives that we want to talk to, or anybody else, or whether we volunteer at the VA center, which we do considerable. We have a number of people that are there day and night assisting the patients whatever we can. And we also always wear that cap to identify that we're a Jewish war veteran to the general population. This particular cap is sign of the commander. I was the commander of the Jewish war veteran of Wisconsin for about 2 years, and I'm still active as an officer. This picture of me, as you can see, is a different cap. This is being the commander of just one of the posts. We have about 3 posts in Milwaukee here, and I was the commander for a couple of years on that, prior to me becoming the commander of the Wisconsin department.
I don't know how to get this without my hands.
Go farther back. This picture was taken of me in celebration of one of the 4th of July. As you can tell, I have a shirt with a flag on of the United States of America, which I'm very proud of.